Number 10. John Mayer. John may be known for spending time with the ladies, but it's not all peaches and cream. The musician was doing an interview with Playboy magazine in 2010, and now I know it involves Playboy, who are notoriously provocative, but even they thought this interview was just a bit too much. John gets into some pretty graphic depictions of things that he wanted to do to Jessica Simpson, using language that cannot be repeated online. He then ventures off the physical intimacy side of things and instead begins to speak about his, and I quote, hood pass, claiming that he had become so popular among black people that he could get away with anything he wanted. And then he called it an N-word pass. Following the interview, fans were beyond upset at his behavior and his attitude towards women. Many turned on John, making a massive dent in his career. Nowadays, this is one of the only things John is remembered for. Well, that and Your Body is a Wonderland, because it's a pretty catchy song. Number 9. Paris Hilton. Paris is the originator of the phrase famous for being famous. This woman made headlines many times over the years for a little bit of everything. In 2011, Paris appeared on ABC to discuss her career, personal life, and the recent situations that she had been dealing with involving stalkers. During the interview, she revealed a few things about her life that had previously been speculated, like the fact that she used a higher-pitched baby voice on the show Simple Life, but in real life had a much deeper and more serious tone. But the conversation eventually ventures into uncharted waters. The interviewer asked Paris if she felt that her former friend and protege Kim Kardashian had overshadowed her in the eyes of the media. Paris says nothing, looks to her publicist, and goes to stand up. They almost wrapped the interview entirely, but eventually things simmered down and they were able to clear things up. However, the moment stuck with fans of Hilton immediately and begged the question, why is she so uncomfortable to talk about this, and is it because it's true? Well, it turns out that the world answered that question for her, as Kim's show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, made it big, and Paris Hilton's show was cancelled after one season. Number 8. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, known for his hilarious personality on and off screen, gave Kat Sadler from E! News and Daily Pop an awkward interview on the red carpet at Harper's Bazaar party in 2017. The interaction started with Jim slowly circling Kat as she attempts to express her confusion and excitement that Jim Carrey was at a Fashion Week event. Was this man known for being an incredible artist, bringing his talents to the fashion world? No, he was just in a mood. By 2017, Jim had made a name for himself as an oddly serious guy who tended to venture into the realm of energies and universal concepts when he started getting into deep conversations. He started the conversation with, "This is meaningless," and then he continued to say that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing that he could attend that night. The event was a celebration of icons and celebrities, according to Kat, to which Jim said he did not agree, as in he didn't agree with the concept of icons or celebrities. He continues to give a small speech about not believing that people are actually real and that we're a field of energy and that peace lies beyond personality. Sorry, I'm feeling woozy just talking about it. The entire time this interview is taking place, Kat is visibly uncomfortable, just counting down the moment that Jim says something funny or even remotely related to fashion. Instead, he just shares his thoughts, tells her that she has a nice fragrance, and then he walks away. While Jim's career had already started to slow down at that point, the clip became viral and studios were wondering if he was a good fit for any role anymore. Many scripts with his name on it were then rewritten or simply kept to themselves, right up until 2020 when he made a small comeback in the surprisingly fun movie Sonic the Hedgehog. Number 7. Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin is a very eccentric man, and he's genuinely a really just wonderful performer. Her is a weird dramatic movie that everyone should definitely see at least once. While doing press for a film in 2009, Joaquin was making an appearance on the David Letterman show when David noticed the actor had drastically changed since his last appearance on The Tonight Show. He was wearing sunglasses, he had spawned a big beard and long hair, and it sounded like he was chewing gum the entire time. When David asked Joaquin if he was doing alright, he responded with a muffled, "Yeah, I'm okay," in grand Joaquin fashion. This pattern continued as David goes over his accolades and discusses the announcement Joaquin had made a few weeks prior that he was quitting the acting world forever. It turns out that he was planning to shift his focus into the music world, specifically hip-hop, wishing to be a rapper. Does that make sense? After roughly 10 minutes of screen time, the interview wraps up with sarcasm and a clip from his new film, Two Lovers. Following the interview, many were concerned that Joaquin was maybe under the influence of something, or maybe just he was under anesthesia because he was so quiet and dark and anyway. But it turns out that he was attempting to perform a spoof. According to Joaquin, the entire incident was staged to promote another film that was in the works called I'm Still Here, where the character in the film acts in a very similar manner. Despite the reveal of this being a staged interview, it only made Joaquin look like a wacky whack job. Number 6. Megan Fox. Megan has been featured in several films over the years, but it was an interview about her time working with Michael Bay on the Transformers set that canceled her for good. The original live-action Transformers movie came out in 2007 and co-starred Megan and Shia LaBeouf in the leading roles. Now, it was a fun movie on screen, but behind the scenes there was a ton of tension. According to Megan, who had previously worked with Michael on Bad Boys 2, working with Michael was like working for Schmittler. Fun fact, if you put sh in front of someone's name, you can say it online. Loophole. Of course, Michael didn't appreciate being compared to one of the worst men in human history, so many speculated that her being left out of the third movie may have had something to do with the behind-the-scenes drama. She went on to call him bland and claiming that he had no personality or social skills of any kind, which is just rude. When the comments were made public, her career began to slowly suffer. Not only was she written out of the Transformers series, but she was forced to make a public apology and retracted the statements following the massive slew of backlash. She took a few years off, but Michael himself later acknowledged the missteps on both their parts and not only accepted the retraction, but the pair were able to patch things up and work together on the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. Awesome! Number 5. Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse may not be the busiest bee that he once was, but that's probably because when he's off camera, he's a little stingy with the details. While doing an interview with Romina Puga for her online series Say My Name, Jesse was promoting his new film, Now You See Me. From the moment the camera rolls, Jesse is just obviously annoyed with the situation and with Romina herself. When she refers to Morgan Freeman as Freeman, he asks if she's on like a baseball team with him or something. What's wrong with referring to someone by their last name, huh? Eisenberg continued to poke fun at Romina as she attempted to do some sleight of hand magic, accidentally revealing some scribbles written on her palm. Jesse berates her for being so forgetful that she had to write things down on her hand and then asks her not to refer to Morgan Freeman as Freeman again. When she asks Eisenberg to do a card trick he learned on set, he compared Romina to the comedian Carrot Top, who's universally panned as a terrible comedian. If you're watching this, I'm really sorry, Carrot Top. Also, Carrot Top watches my videos? When the trick is done, Romina doesn't play along, further frustrating Jesse beyond belief. What's funny about this interview is it actually impacted both people involved. While Jesse continues to work, it's in a much smaller capacity, and his hits are few and far between. Meanwhile, Romina received lots of flack for delivering such a bad interview that she eventually stopped doing the show altogether. Number 4. David Letterman. Now, David Letterman has been around for a long time, and while he did eventually get replaced with Stephen Colbert, it was after many, many years of being extremely odd towards his female guests. There are several examples over the years of David being just a little bit too intimate with his guests, including a time when he would not stop telling Jennifer Aniston how good her legs looked in her dress. He literally told Madonna to go kiss a man in the audience. He called Keira Knightley a lovely offering. He told Dolly Parton that he wanted to see her sweaty. The list goes on. It took way too long for someone to realize that this man was just a bit too open at times, sharing way too much information. One thing he continued to do right up until he retired in 2014 was show revealing or intimate photos of his guests without their knowledge. Like when Emma Watson was forced to explain a wardrobe malfunction after David pulled out a photo from a recent red carpet event. He brushed people's hair, he made dirty jokes, and seriously, this dude was obsessed with legs. In fact, one of the last interviews to ever take place on the show with him was with Jennifer Aniston, and he just sat there complimenting her looks for basically the entire thing. While his career was never destroyed, I thought that it would be worth a mention because this is a list of people who have done some scummy stuff on the air, and David is no exception. Number 3. Robert Pattinson. Now, I will be using the term destroyed loosely here as this incident did destroy his reputation, but he was eventually able to make a comeback. In 2018, while promoting the Twilight sequel New Moon, Robert made an appearance on the Tyra Banks show alongside his co-star Taylor Lautner. Now, things are going smooth until something takes Tyra over. She tells Robert that she wants him to bite her right on the neck, like a vampire. Well, Rob hesitates for about 3 seconds and then chomps down on Tyra for a moment. The clip is lighthearted and Tyra is fueled with joy, but according to members of the production team, Summit Entertainment was not happy. Robert was scalded by the director and his team of agents who had not given Robert the green light to bite a woman's neck on television even if she literally asked him to do it. This caused a lot of personal issues for the people on the Twilight team as they wanted their film to be seen as a serious dramatic piece, yet Robert was playing vampire for fun with Tyra Banks. As I said, this interview did impact his career, but in a different way. As the Twilight movies continued, Robert was offered small roles here and there, but thanks to this interview with Tyra, he was no longer some young-faced actor the studio could just manipulate. He was Robert. His career eventually picked up outside of the young adult book world, and he is now a very bankable man in Hollywood. Number 2, Katherine Heigl. Kathy was riding high back in 2007. The former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Dramatic Series, but she also began transitioning into the big screen with the success of her first feature comedy, Knocked Up, alongside comedy legend Seth Rogen. Unfortunately, her rise to the tippy top quickly became a free fall into a volcano, following an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview in 2008. In the interview, Katherine made a move that still has people scratching their heads to this day. She openly bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as shrew, humorless, and uptight, while also placing blame on Seth Rogen for writing the men as lovable, goofy, and fun. The film still sits at an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because while she may claim that the project was problematic, the final product was actually a really fun love story filled with some solid jokes, performances, and a great story at its core. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had a fight on set, and it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point. These comments, combined with some negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood quickly came to a screeching halt. And at number 1, Kanye West. Kanye was slowly going mad in the eyes of the public way back in 2010. As the years went by, he made more and more appearances on TV, but it wasn't until 2018 where his political beliefs got him heated on Jimmy Kimmel Live. When Jimmy asked Kanye how he felt about the response to his decree that he was all for President at the time Donald Trump, he was largely criticized. He defends his statements by claiming that he did not have to conform to some united mindset and that he was a little bit upset at the backlash, but that a part of him kind of enjoyed the hate. He then suggested that the world was in a simulation, claiming that it's filled with unpaid actors. The over 20-minute interview is filled with metaphors, the concept of love, and a comparison of himself to the Son of God. This interview was only a short time after his anti-Semitic tweets were circulating the internet. He even makes a joke about the anxiety of asking his publicist to appear on the show. He was fairly calm in his delivery of his opinions, but he made sure his opinions were known. Number 10, Mike Tyson. So I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to this man. He is someone who seems to just bounce back after every single heinous thing he's done. So we're gonna run through a few of them. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the 80s, and it wasn't even something he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs. When the topic of Mike's behavior came up, she said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper. Recent reports had also surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with Robin, something she seemingly confirmed, while Mike just stared at the interviewer the entire time, giving him an evil look. Now, that was one of the first little notches on his belt. That wasn't really a meltdown. As the years went by, more and more controversies came to light, and during a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career in jeopardy, but he finally drove that nail into the coffin on CP24's Breakfast Television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from "So, what's the show about?" to "So, should you even be allowed on stage, you monster?" That's not what he actually said, but apparently that's what Mike Tyson heard, because he stopped answering questions and would instead hurl sarcastic insults. The F word is once again his favorite, and just throws it at him. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since then, and probably for a good reason. Number 9, Paula Abdul. Q13 Fox News. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound like a little bit of a fool. During an interview with Q13, things started out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of their own. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original issues. The interviewers were trying to ask her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claims that the worst singers that he has ever encountered dwell. Instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. It's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was actually just the way that she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula is noticeably woozy. Simon Cowell has actually claimed the only reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see if she would bring in the American Idol viewers, and when that didn't pan out, he realized the right move to make was to let her go because she's not great on television. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only making that meltdown bigger and bigger. Number 8, Robert Downey Jr. Being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe means a ton of interviews. Now, Robert had the fortune of playing Iron Man for 10 years, being featured in 11 movies. While doing press for his second round with the Avengers in 2015, he had the misfortune of speaking with a legendarily terrible interviewer, Krishnan Guru Murphy, on Channel 4. Now, I've talked about this guy in other videos for making Quentin Tarantino walk out of an interview, and he is making a return for something pretty similar. The interview is uncomfortable from the very beginning. Krishnan stumbles through his questions as quickly as he can, with Robert doing his best just to keep things smooth. Instead of asking questions about the movie though, Krishnan decided to probe Robert about his life in prison and with substance control issues. Now, at first, he's okay and answers the questions, but then Krishnan brings up his dad and asks if he feels that he escaped his dark past. Robert is visibly anxious and begins breathing pretty heavy to keep himself calm. He asks what they were doing there, and then the team said goodbye. He stood up and walked out of the room, and he said that Krishnan seemed nice, but things were getting just a little bit too Diane Sawyer for his taste. This was one of the most uncomfortable interview moments in Robert's career, and it's not even close to the worst one for Krishnan. Number 7, Sofia Vergara. Fans of the show Modern Family will recognize Sofia as Gloria, aka Manny's mom, who is just absolutely hilarious and heartwarming at the same time, even outside of Modern Family. Now, while speaking with Ellen in 2017 about her career and some new projects coming up, Ellen decided to play a game called English Word of the Day. Claiming to be learning Spanish with one word a day, she wished to teach Sofia one as well. Before the segment, Sofia is roasting Ellen for her dislike of cotton, but when Ellen asks if she wants to learn the English word with her, Sofia scoffs and is visibly annoyed, claiming that she speaks English very well. Ellen gives her the word flabbergasted and asks her to define what it means. Not only does she pronounce it correctly the first time, but she knew exactly what it meant. Ellen follows it up with discombobulated, which left Sofia confused and thinking pretty hard. Now, she butchered the word, and while she seemed to be taking things in stride, it turns out Sofia was so frustrated with participating in this game, as she is a bit self-conscious when it comes to her accent. A lot of people consider the segment to be a little bit racist and more cringe-inducing than fun. I've seen the clip. That's accurate. Number 6, Joaquin Phoenix. We understand a dedication to your craft, and Joaquin Phoenix is just a prime example. This dude's acting career has been going steady since he first appeared in the 1989 comedy Parenthood when he was in his teens. Now, while he is seen as one of the greatest actors in recent history, his reputation on set was a little tarnished thanks to a freak out while filming the 2018 solo flick Joker. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote the shoot when Jimmy plays a behind-the-scenes clip of Joaquin getting loud and angry at a man named Larry, and the constant whispering behind the cameras before dropping a few F-bombs and storming off this set. When the cameras came back to the studio, Joaquin was frozen in shock and clearly not expecting that clip to ever see the light of day. He is not having a good time. He explained that Larry was a cinematographer who teased Joaquin off set earlier in the day, calling him a diva and referring to him as Cher. In fact, if you're watching the clip and during the outbursts, you can actually hear him say, "You want to call me Cher? How is that an insult?" He then explained that there is a lot of pressure on set, especially in a closed space, like the apartment from the scene that they were filming. He apologized to the audience for having to see him behave like that, which, was met with applause. Because at the end of the day, he's a performer and no harm came from the outburst or the meltdown, and honestly, if Larry's cool with it, so are we. Number 5, Nicolas Cage. The most unhinged man in Hollywood history. One of the few people who somehow managed to star in billions of movies, but has barely seen or kept a cent of that money. During a press junket in 1990, Nick went on a talk show called Wogan to discuss his latest project, Wild at Heart. When the host Terry Wogan announced Nick Cage, he entered with karate kicks, a front flip, somersault. He threw wads of cash at the audience because, hey, he's Nick Cage, why not? And when he finally sat down, moments before the interview actually began, he asked if he could take his jacket off. He proceeds to take his jacket off and the shirt underneath of it, because if people thought Nick Cage was all together, they were proven wrong during this interview. Despite the content being relatively tamed, the entire time you can just see sweat glistening off of Nick's chest, because guess what? Wearing a leather jacket on your bare chest is beyond uncomfortable, especially when there are lights aimed at you. Now sure, it might look cool until you take it off and you just have a heat rash. Nick's always been unhinged, but this meltdown during this interview was truly unique. His behavior in the 90s was apparent and well documented thanks to him literally being in like 2 movies a year. Number 4, Christian Bale. Christian is a very versatile actor, physically and of course skill-wise. He's able to shrink and grow his physique seemingly at will. He's played everything from a skinny substance addict to Batman in 2008. Christian starred in the 3rd film of the Terminator franchise, Terminator Salvation, and while he was filming a scene, director of photography Shane Holbert apparently just moved into Christian's eyesight, and this caused Christian to snap out of character and into defense mode. The now infamous audio clip of Christian screaming at Shane to make matters worse, anyone trying to calm Christian down were met with an equally swift verbal lashing. While the cinematographer was just checking a light to make sure that it was in the right place, you know, like doing his job, Bale made it his mission to share his intense feelings with the entire crew. When the audio leaked, Bale apologized for his actions and told the world to praise the crew for their work. Now while the movie turned out okay visually speaking, the project as a whole is remembered as a terrible Terminator movie, and he gets pretty uncomfortable when he talks about it on stage. Number 3, Paris Hilton. Paris is the originator of the phrase famous for being famous, because this woman made headlines many times over the years for a little bit of everything. In 2011, Paris appeared on ABC to discuss her career, her personal life, and the recent situations she had been dealing with involving stalkers. During the interview, she revealed a few things about her life that had previously been speculated, like the fact that she used a higher-pitched baby voice on the show Simple Life, but had a much deeper and serious tone in real life. But the conversation eventually ventures into uncharted waters. The interviewer asked Paris if she felt that her former friend and protege, Kim Kardashian, had overshadowed her in the eyes of the media. Paris says nothing, looks to her publicist, and goes to stand up. They almost wrapped the interview entirely, but eventually things simmered down and they were able to clear up the air. However, the moment stuck with fans of Hilton immediately and begged the question, why is she so uncomfortable talking about this? And it's because it's true. Well, it turns out the world answered the question for her, because Kim Kardashian's show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, made it big, and Paris Hilton's show was cancelled after 1 season. So, there you go. Number 2, Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer is not just a terrible person who turned out to be a creepy creepo. He was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent Tom into a rant about psychiatry, and somehow the topic got into Ritalin and pseudosciences. I don't know, Tom yelled at Matt about knowing more than him about psychiatry, like he had some inside information that he was secretly a therapist, who knows. The interview came at the height of Tom's pretty public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruise was asked about his previous criticisms of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded by calling her a glib. I looked up the definition of that word, and it means fluent and voluble, but insincere and shallow. But this was only one of the several interviews from 2005 that I wanted to discuss today, especially with Tom Cruise. Good lord, that was a rough year for him. When he was with Katie Holmes, he was a nutcase. Just ask Oprah. I mean, ever since the mid-2000s, his career has mainly been Mission Impossible, with only a few small roles to fill the gaps here and there, not the Hollywood superstar that he was aiming to be. And at number 1, my favorite entry, Bobcat Goldthwait. Allow me to start the entry by doing an impression of Bobcat. Thank you. Bobcat may not be much of an actor these days, but in the 80s and 90s, this man was dominating the film and comedy scene. His zany brand of over-the-top, high-energy performance was so well received by any and all who saw him. I can still hear his voice echoing in my head whenever I think of Police Academy. In 1994, comedian Arsenio Hall invited his longtime buddy Bobcat onto his talk show, which unfortunately was in its final days on the air. When he heard the cancellation, Bobcat decided to send a message to the big brains that made the decision, because he spray painted the word Paramount on the wall behind him, throws furniture around, breaks TV screens, all the while Arsenio is just sitting back and laughing. When they returned from commercial, the set was in ruins, and despite that, Arsenio joked that he was like, "The worst part is I have to pretend like I'm mad at him." Joke's on him, that wasn't the only talk show meltdown he partook in. A few years after this, Bobcat set a chair on fire on the Jay Leno show for no reason, just for fun. Like he was standing there just going, fire. He was fined over $3,000 and made to replace the chair. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed, he hasn't been asked to be on any talk shows recently. Number 10, Hugh Grant. In 2023, the world was gifted with an awkward interview between model Ashley Graham and Dungeons & Dragons star Hugh Grant. Ashley was trying her best to give a good interview and ask Hugh the hard-hitting questions. Like, who was he wearing? Was he excited to be there? Did he hope anyone won? You know, the generic questions they tell you to ask on day one. Hugh was not budging, to the point where she just kinda gave up and let him loose. One of her last questions to Hugh was regarding his cameo in the Netflix film Glass Onion, which he says was barely a full day on set. The incident sparked a ton of backlash, mainly aimed at Hugh for making Ashley's job more and more difficult because he wasn't even responding to that first round of questioning. But then the narrative switched to, why wasn't she asking him better questions? ABC decided that the hosting gig was going to go to somebody else next year, and it's looking like she won't be making any more interview appearances anytime soon. Number 9, Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler's comments about the upcoming live-action Snow White movie could have a huge impact on ticket sales, according to branding experts. The 22-year-old actress has received plenty of backlash after she admitted that she hated the original 1937 movie and branded the storyline as weird, while referring to the prince character as a stalker. Not wrong. The backlash occurred after several videos of Rachel speaking negatively about the original film in various interviews last year that resurfaced online, where she talked about her version of this character, saying that she's not going to be saved by a prince and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. While Disney may just be trying to modernize the classic, these comments were causing her to be labeled as a fake feminist. Some critics accused Rachel of gaslighting, and one marketing consultant has warned that Disney will need to be careful with how they've portrayed Snow White. Snow White has already been suffering from backlash well before Rachel made her comments. Peter Dinklage spoke out about Disney not using true dwarf actors for the new film and instead opting to use heavy CGI on Hollywood elites. Rachel's role as Snow White is in the air as of filming, because while this film is set to release in March, the writers and actors strike set production back, so who knows, maybe they recasted her in the background while we weren't paying attention. Number 8, Adam Driver. Adam Driver is an incredible actor, and I personally got to see him perform for the first time in a little rom-com alongside Daniel Radcliffe called The F Word. If you ever seen that, check it out, it's a great movie. And then I saw Star Wars. Okay, don't worry, I know that he's Kylo Ren. This year, Adam had the chance to play one of the creator of one of the fastest and most recognizable car brands in the entire world, Enzo Ferrari of Ferrari Cars. The film has been receiving some pretty solid reviews, following in the shadows of films like Ford v Ferrari from a couple of years back. It seems like we might get a cinematic universe of stories behind popular car brands. There's a DeLorean movie, there's this movie. They should just make a movie about Subarus next. My parents love Subarus, they're great cars. While doing press for the film, Adam was involved in a Q&A that resulted in one of the best Adam Driver clips to ever exist. A man in the audience asks Adam how he feels about stunt racing scenes, as they are pretty intense, harsh, and honestly, in their opinion, cheesy. Cheesy? Adam doesn't like that word. He sips his water, and with very little hesitation, he says, I don't know, F you. Next question. The clip became viral very fast, and people are actually praising Adam for his response. People at these events are given a rare chance to speak with actors, directors, and everything in between, so when someone takes that precious time just to tell you how they feel about something and to see if you agree, it's just a waste of time. Number 7. Pedro Pascal. Pedro is another treasure in this world. Not only has his energy and genuine personality been showcased in his TV and film roles, but he's become one of the most recognizable faces in meme culture. He's also been involved in projects from every genre: comedy, action, horror, and now live-action video game adaptations thanks to the Last of Us series. Earlier this year, he was attending the premiere of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and an interviewer stopped him on the red carpet and asked if he might like to read some thirst tweets to the camera. This was unprompted and never confirmed to be okay with Pedro beforehand, before he was put on camera. Pedro took the piece of paper that he was handed. It contained the tweets. He giggled, took a moment to read it over, and with a big smile on his face just gave them a sincere no, and then called the comments too dirty to read. But being the man that he is, he told them that they were doing a great job and that those were some thirsty tweets. He was not insulted by this interaction at all, and if anything, it's just another clip that showcases how much of a gem this man really is. Number 6. Dax Shepard. In September of this year, an individual named Jonathan Van Ness, or JVN, made an appearance on Dax's podcast, Armchair Experts. JVN rose to fame after appearing on the series Queer Eye and has continued to work in several sections of the beauty and fashion industry for years. While speaking with Dax, known best as a comedic actor from movies like Employee of the Month and Idiocracy, he actually ended up bringing JVN to tears thanks to his comments towards the concept of transitioning and gender-affirming care. During the conversation, Dax wished to debate both sides, to which JVN responded with several well-researched points. Dax's views have always been questioned, as they seem to be based in misinformation and are actually anti-trans in general. Towards the end of the conversation, and after JVN basically had to defend their beliefs over and over again, Dax apologized and acknowledged that he should not have put JVN in that position. Jay expresses their exhaustion of having to justify these comments and fight for the rights of younger people who are transitioning. JVN is just very passionate about youths especially being accepted and involved in as many activities and interests as possible in their lives. Dax has been called out for his comments when the entire point of the podcast was to discuss JVN's own podcast, so you might say he went a little off topic. Number 5. Tony Danza. Modern audiences may not know much about Tony Danza, but if you're a fan of the 80s and 90s, this man will have come across your screen once or twice. Starring in shows like Taxi and Who's the Boss, Tony dominated the sitcom scene for a solid portion of his career. Earlier this year, at the Broadway premiere of New York, an interviewer named Rye Myers asked Tony a question about New York that left Danza branded as one of the rudest celebrities in the world. He was simply asking Tony what his favorite NYC staple food was. Pizza, hot dogs, what makes Tony tick? Instead of answering the rather simple question and just moving on, he took a moment to pause and tell Rye that he should get better questions, and even told him to relax. The clip went viral and people quickly began supporting Myers. Even the great Michael Bublé chimed in to let him know that he loved him and was ready to share a pizza with him at any time if Tony wasn't invited. Tony actually reached out later on and apologized for his response, deciding that he ultimately wanted to squash the beef. Things were patched up, but that is still an extremely rude and awkward moment. Number 4. Doja Cat. The Met Gala always seems to bring in some truly memorable moments, whether it's an outlandish outfit or an interview where they just meow the entire time. It's a weird place to be. Yes, Doja Cat went to the Met Gala in 2023 dressed as a cat. She literally had prosthetic nose on her face and prosthetics on her eyebrows, all the while wearing a sparkly silver dress with little sparkly ears on top. Emma Chamberlain decided that Doja was the woman that she needed to interview. No one else. Doja Cat was the one, which ended up being a very bad decision. Great, well, bad for her, great for us. Doja responded to every single question that this woman asked with a resounding meow. At one point, she actually attempts to tell a story and meows a few times with different tones, like meow, meow, meow. The entire time, the guy who is standing with her is just kind of like, yeah, that's Doja Cat. She's been doing this for a month now. The moment was honestly more entertaining than rude, but I'm not sure if this was planned beforehand or not. If it was, great meme, good job. If it's not, this is horrible, and Doja, you need to chill. Number 3, Liam Neeson. Liam may be known for his serious roles and for being, one of the worst parents in cinematic history, but this year he was known as an uncomfortable man thanks to his appearance on the show The View. Appearing to discuss his career and potential projects coming down the line, the conversation shifted after one of the hosts, Anna Navarro, jabbed Joy Behar about her crush on Liam Neeson, saying that there was at least one woman on this panel that would love to be taken by Liam. Ew. The show then played a supercut of all the times that Joy has spoken about Liam, including a time when she said that she would want to have her ashes sprinkled over him, and another bit where she admitted to getting a little aroused when she saw him on screen. Liam joked at first, asking Joy if she received the checks, insinuating that she gets paid every time she talks about him. Following the interview, Liam felt the whole thing to be a little bit of a waste of time. The segment about the crush was long and is a crush that materialized like 15 years ago. Eventually, he had a normal conversation, but overall, it was just a little uncomfortable. Number 2, Chloe Fineman. For anyone who does not know Chloe Fineman, I'm sorry. She is currently working as a cast member on Saturday Night Live, and she's genuinely doing a great job and is hilarious. Fortunately, earlier this year, she was involved in a red carpet interview that proved how little she actually knew about some of the celebrities involved with the event she was at. Fineman hosted the Vogue live stream of the 2023 Met Gala alongside Derek Blasberg. The pair were eventually joined by Aubrey Plaza, Madeline Klein, the designer of many dresses from the evening, and Stella McCartney. As the interview began, Fineman attempts to introduce the women that she's interviewing but fumbles all of their names, one of them on purpose. Instead of calling them by their first names, she refers to Madeline and Stella as McCartney and Klein. She then calls Aubrey Plaza Audrey, and Plaza improvised her own last name, Slutburn, which may have to be bleeped out, but I really hope it's not. Chloe and Aubrey actually know each other very well and have worked together a few times. Chloe and Aubrey actually know each other really well, and they've worked together a few times in the past, so this was clearly just an inside joke. McCartney was having none of these shenanigans though. Chloe instinctively laughed when someone makes a joke, so when the women kept responding to the questions, "What are you wearing?" with each other's last names, she had to giggle. McCartney asked her if she was taking this seriously, and the tension dissipated only when she asked McCartney about taking over for Karl Lagerfeld, the designer that the night had been themed after. Yeah, I don't know how to say his last name, please don't comment about it. The moment was tense, and we're sure Chloe was happy to get back to World of Sketch Comedy as soon as possible. And at number 1, Jada Pinkett Smith. Every single interview that this woman has ever done has had some kind of shade or hidden meaning behind it, whether it's trying to patch things up with someone on her own little Facebook talk show that hurt her, or just telling the world every single dirty detail about Will Smith that she knows. This woman is a menace who makes for uncomfortable interviews and moments every time she is on screen. This year alone, she outed her marriage as a sham, claimed Tupac Shakur was in love with her, and wrote a book about everything in between. Don't buy it.
At number 10, we have Thinking Kate Hudson Won an Oscar. In the world of Hollywood, winning an Oscar is one of the biggest career-changing moments. So when ABC reporter George Penicino said, "Kate, you know what it's like to win an Oscar?" to which she was uncomfortable and replied, I've never won an Oscar. For some background information, Kate Hudson starred in movies like Glass Onion, Mother's Day with Jennifer Aniston, as well as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So I can understand why he thought she would have won. But when you're an interviewer, it's important to have a base of knowledge on the people who are going to be there, so as to not embarrass yourself. And this was no exception. Thankfully for George, he wasn't fired because of his little live television slip-up, but it's safe to say that he has learned his lesson about making assumptions.
Number 9. Zac Efron's Love Tubes. Zac rose to fame as a Disney darling, playing the leading role of Troy Bolton in the popular High School Musical series. Since his Disney days, Zac has lent his face and voice to several projects over the years, but the red carpet event that we're talking about today was for the animated Dr. Seuss movie, The Lorax. Zac, who voiced the main character of the film, was walking the red carpet when he suddenly handed his assistant something in his pocket. As he handed them the product, something fell out of his pocket and onto the ground. That something is a word that I can't say online, so let's just call them love tubes. Zac's love tube wrapper was flat on the carpet right there for the world to see. He quickly picked it up, but the damage was already done. In the first interview following this incident, the interviewer asked Zac if anything unplanned had happened to him recently, and he then explained that it was a complete accident, that there was no pre-show pocket check, anything that could have prevented it. Well, Illumination didn't like that excuse, and they also didn't like their main star being associated with such an adult product. So when the plans for a Lorax sequel were brought to the studios, Zac's name was left out and replaced by another star. I guess whoever they picked wasn't famous enough because the project was ultimately shelved by the studio, and Zac was able to find work somewhere else. In Baywatch.
At number 8, we have Jim Carrey's existential rant. Jim Carrey is a character who has had many varying roles. From the Grinch in the iconic live-action version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, he was in The Cable Guy with Matthew Broderick, and he most recently played Dr. Eggman in the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movies. His IMDb spans on, but something important to know about him is that he had really bad depression, and really let himself go over the years. One of those moments we really saw how the mind of a genius works was when he was on a rant during an interview at the 2017 Harper's Bazaar Icons party. No one really knew why he showed up in the first place if he was so unhappy to be there, but former E! reporter Kat Sadler came up to him to ask him questions. He leaned into the mic and he said, "There is no meaning to any of this." When she asked why he was attending the party, he said that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing he could come to and join, and there he was. Sadler tried to pry about other things and what the term icon meant to him, but he continued to spew existential nonsense that made everyone uncomfortable aside from him. It may not have been gross, but his career did begin to decline, both before and after this.
If there is one thing that should be known about Taylor Swift, is that she can end entire careers with one conversation. In 2015, Taylor was on the red carpet for the Grammy Awards when she was interviewed by Entertainment Tonight. The woman who interviewed her started the interview by asking her cameraman to pan up and down, literally checking Taylor out with this massive camera. It's not weird at all. After going along with the bit for a moment and telling the camera about her dress, the interviewer said that she honestly just wanted a shot of Taylor's legs because, as she said before, Taylor is going to be going home with more than a trophy. Maybe a man. Well, Taylor didn't appreciate that comment or the assumption. She did not laugh and then proceeded to tell the interviewer that she would be going home with no men, just hanging out with friends, maybe some of her cats. While the majority of the interview went well, the interviewers were reprimanded behind the scenes by Taylor herself. The news of Taylor's dislike for the interviewers made its way up to the top, where the ET executives decided to keep them off of the red carpet for a while. Remember, keep your creepy camera gestures to yourself, lady.
At number 6, we have David Letterman with Jennifer Aniston. David Letterman used to be the host of The Tonight Show before Jimmy Fallon took over. He's also a comedian who was successful for many years, and some comedians can take a sketch too far, or commit to a bit that makes people uncomfortable. And that's exactly what happened to a young Jennifer Aniston while on the show with him. They were making conversation, as one does, but then he got up and tried to eat her hair. I understand that you can really like someone as an actor, but when you are actively trying to eat their hair on live television, that is just too far. However, like the true professional she is, she let him. And there are photos out there of David Letterman leaning over Miss Aniston with her hair in his mouth.
Number 5, John Mayer. John may be known for spending time with the ladies, but it's not all peaches and cream. The musician was doing an interview with Playboy magazine in 2010. Now I know it involves Playboy, who are notoriously provocative, but even they thought this interview was just a bit much. John gets into some pretty graphic depictions of things that he wanted to do to Jessica Simpson, using language that cannot be repeated online. But he then ventures off the physical intimacy thing and instead begins to speak about his, and I quote, hood pass, claiming that he had become so popular among black people that he could get away with anything he wanted, and he then called it the N-word pass. Yeah, not a great moment for this guy. Following the interview, fans were beyond upset at his behavior and his attitude towards women and honestly just people in general. Many turned on John, making a massive dent in his career, rightfully so, and nowadays this is one of the only things that he is remembered for. Well, that and his really bad cameo in Get Hard.
At number 4, we have Jay Leno questioning Kanye West. Jay Leno was the host of yet another late night show, and back in 2009, he had Kanye West on his show. You see, the event that caused this was Kanye West interrupting young Taylor Swift's mid-acceptance speech for the best music video, I might add, to say that Beyonce had the best music video and should have won, in front of an audience on TV. For some context, Kanye's mother had passed away in 2007, just a couple years prior to the incident. Jay Leno knew this, and he said that he was fortunate enough to have met his mother. So, Leno, in a very disrespectful fashion, asked Kanye if his mother would have been disappointed in him for doing that, and asked if she would have lectured him. You can see how shocked he is and how hurt he is hearing those words. He almost had no response. Whether or not you're a fan of him, that was still so unprofessional and cruel.
Number 3, Amy Schumer. In the mid-2010s, comedian Amy Schumer was named one of Time magazine's top 100 most influential people and was made to attend a red carpet event to celebrate with her fellow influencers. 2 of them were Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. While discussing the incident on the Graham Norton show, Amy revealed that there was a planned prank on Kim and Ye. Her goal was to get them to crack a smile and get some good fun pics from this event, but Kim and Kanye did not find this situation funny and continued to walk past her as she fell in front of them in a dramatic fashion. The best picture is just Kim staring at Amy for a moment being like, okay, and then just moving on. While the moment was meant to create a fun scene, it instead made Amy look like she had some kind of grudge against Kim and Kanye. While not an interview, the incident on the red carpet forced Comedy Central to postpone a season of her show until things were sorted out with Kim. Well, it turned out that not only did Kim not care about this, but she did end up finding the entire thing funny. With the two apparently now being close friends, Amy even made a cameo on Kim's new reality series, The Kardashians.
At number 2, we have the Marvel interview. I use such a vague title because there is a lot to unpack about this interview with Robert Downey Jr. He had a very rocky upbringing, and he was involved in a lot of illegal activities, had substance issues, and has an internet-famous mugshot. But he's been clean for years, all thanks to his wife. So when the man doing the interview for a Marvel movie pressed about his past, it made him very uncomfortable. And it wasn't just asking some surface level questions, he asked about his relationship with his father and mentioned how he has opened up about his issues with liquids and substances and his upbringing. He then went on to ask RDJ if he really thought he was free from all that, or something you think about. This was when RDJ cut him off, left the room, and walked away from the interview. Imagine the audacity the interviewer must have had to even think about asking Robert such a thing, and even though he had been clean for so long and had finally gained the confidence to speak up about it.
And at number 1, Will Smith. That's right, Will Smith is on this list for slapping someone, but it's not Chris Rock. Today we're talking about an incident on the red carpet that left one paparazzo with a massive red mark on their face and a fired stamp on their forehead. Will was walking the red carpet in 2013 giving people interviews when a Ukrainian comedian named Vitaly Sejik approached him, a man who is unfortunately world famous for being an absolutely terrible person, especially towards celebrities. He pretended to be a reporter and started interviewing Will Smith, but then he suddenly pulls Will towards him and tries to kiss him on his cheeks and his mouth. Well, Will obviously shoves him back and gave him a little, "Hey bud, no thank ya," just a little backhand to the face. A team of security following Mr. Smith picked this guy up and carried him away like the toddler he was. Who knew Will was practicing for his Oscar slap all the way back then? Sejik was finally reprimanded for his actions and was actually made to pay a hefty fine for attempting to force himself on Will Smith. Needless to say, that guy works for himself now.